Well, we are still on our epic journey to Eden. And for those of you who haven't been here, we've been working on a book called The Epic of Eden by Sandra Richter. So we've been talking about the closet, and we've been talking about everything in our closet, about the Old Testament closet. So we threw everything out, and we're just kind of reassembling it. And what we've discovered is that the whole closet is really about one thing. Do you remember what that one thing is? It's the title of the book, Eden. The whole framework of the closet, from the beginning of Genesis to the end of Revelation, is the journey of Eden from its creation to its new creation. And everything in between is what we are talking about in the Bible. So we're giving framework. We're not going through every little story in the Bible, but we are going through the framework of how this whole thing is set up. Now, how many of you, that is a new fact for you, that this is all about Eden? How many of you have learned that one new fact? I don't know. I didn't know it. I knew there was Eden in Genesis, and I knew we had a second coming, but I did not get that the whole structure of the Bible centered around the before, during, and after. And the other thing that we're going to find out is that we are the people of someone called Shem. You see, in the Old Testament, there is someone called Shem that we're going to talk about today. But in our closet, we have 5 shelves. And those shelves are our 5 major patriarchs. So the Old Testament is full of lots and lots and lots of names, right? And if we try to remember those names, we're going to go a little crazy going, who belongs to whom? So it's all whittled down to just the top 5. And out of these top 5, they're called patriarchs because they're the father of the group that follows. There is a storyline. And do you remember who they are? There's Adam and Noah and Abraham, and Moses, and David. And so those are our shelves in our closet. And each storyline is part of that journey through beginning of Eden to the next Eden. We are either searching for it, we're either longing for it, we're either fighting for it, or we're hoping to get back in it, or we're being redeemed to it. Somewhere in that, we're always working through our closet with Eden. Well, last time I left off, we were talking about the future Eden, but the reason we're talking about it was because the first Eden was broken by, remember who broke it? Adam and Eve. They broke creation on what we're calling the 8th day. So the first 7 days, things were created, and on the 8th day, things were broken. And when that happened, chaos that had been created and made into order, which created our earth and our world and everything in it, was broken, and chaos started to rule and ooze out across all of creation. And so that brings us to the next chapter, the next part of our shelf, which is Noah, that epic flood. Now, a lot of you, how many of you have ever lived through a flood or remember an epic flood? If you lived through 93, you lived through 65, or you remember stories of those things, those were epic floods. Well, let me tell you about another epic flood. It was the winter snow melt, and it melted all of a sudden. It was a huge, huge snowfall, and it melted all of a sudden, coupled with heavy rains. And so it formed ice chunks, and those ice chunks caused a massive flood because for the first time in recorded history, the banks of Cherry Creek flooded over. And it didn't just flood over, it crashed through every culvert and every bridge, ripping it all out. And so every road was ripped to pieces, and it was springtime, and it was school time, and the children had to go to school. Because we live in the land of Cleveland here, and Cleveland believes in school. So I was too little. I was a kindergartner at the time. They called off school for kindergartners because it was too dangerous for us to go to school. But hey, those healthy first graders, 1st through 12th, still had to go to school because the education must go on, and our founding fathers were going to make sure of it. You see, Cherry Creek snaked all the way through the school district from Scotch Lake all the way on its journey to the Minnesota River. And it separated the school district from the school. There's very few kids on the north side and on the east side who could get to school, but most of us were cut off because every road was affected by the flood. Well, back in those days, if you missed school, you missed education dollars, which is why, money talks, and so the kids had to walk. So this is what they did. Instead of building an ark, they crafted some planks to go across each part of the raging, well, it was a river now, right? So the bus would bring the kids up to the planks, and another bus would take them away from the planks. And so the kids literally walked the plank across Cherry Creek, and I still have nightmares thinking about this, crossing the plank to the next bus. And of course, the founding fathers are there to offer words of encouragement, like, don't look down, it'll be okay. You're a brave little girl, you're a brave little boy, you can do it. And just by luck, I think we didn't lose a child, right? None of them dropped into the raging river. And they had to do it on the way back, and then they had to do it for the next 2 days until at least one of the main roads into Cleveland was made well enough so that the buses could cross over it. Well, you know, a flood happens. And usually things return to normal. And in that case, it took most of the summer for all those roads to return to normal. But the truth about the flood in the Bible is that it did not return to the pre-flood state. Because, why? Chaos filled the world from Adam and Eve so well that it broke the eighth day and everything after that. And so all the generations between Adam and Noah are many. We don't know how many, but there are lots and lots. And during that time, chaos, because Adam and Eve let it into the garden, began to rule. And it ruled very well. And so chaos oozed over the face of all of creation, and the human race no longer acted like they were made in the image of God. Now, I know you might know some people who you have encountered who don't act like they're made in the image of God. I know I have met some of them. But this is what they say in Genesis chapter 6, verse 5. So we're only in chapter 6. The Lord saw that humanity had become thoroughly evil, not a little, thoroughly evil on the earth, and that every idea their minds thought up, not even good thinkers, always completely evil. So there wasn't even a little good anywhere. These are evil people. What has started out as good Adam and Eve has turned into a whole bunch of evil people in humanity. And I've met some of them. I know you may have, but have you encountered the entire human race? But what about the rest of creation? Because I don't know about you, but I always felt sorry for those animals that didn't get on the ark. I always thought maybe that wasn't the best, and God didn't really know what he was doing, but this is what it says. God saw the earth was corrupt because all, and underscore the world, all the creatures behaved corruptly too on earth. So it wasn't just humanity that was broke. Adam and Eve broke everything in creation, including the animals. And so Adam and Eve have broken it, and now God steps in to rescue it. And look at how God does it. God looks for just one person, and he can only find one person who's still righteous. And who is that one person? Noah. It's Noah. And he looks for Noah, and he uses the one person to sustain humanity through this whole thing. And he, unlike the founding fathers, knew that planks were not going to work. And so he asked Noah to build an ark. So God uses the one to save the future of many. Noah's primary purpose, get this, was just to build an ark to transport the seeds of Eden to the future of creation. The flood's intentional. The flood isn't just to wash away the evil, it's there to uncreate creation. So if you look on your handouts, you're going to see the creation as it was listed in Genesis 1. And this is what happens. Day and night, because the rains come, it gets dark, right? When you've seen those heavy rains, sometimes we have to have the street lights on. It's that dark because it's pouring that much rain. And so day and night disappear. And as this day and night disappear, the sky collapses. Remember, God had taken the water and he separated it, so there was water above where the rain came from and the water below. And now with all the rain coming down, it's like the dome has collapsed. And then on the third day, which for the land and the plants, the water is consumed now the land, so the land disappears, the plants disappear. And so God uncreates day 1, 2, and 3 with that flood. And then as the waters begin to recede, God then starts to fill the creation back up. And as the rain stops, the clouds move away, you see the sun and the moon again and the stars. And then the sky is now lifted up, so we have separated the water from the water. And then God allows the animals that were in the ark to then fill day 5 and 6. And so, how many of you knew this was the second creation? So there's two creation stories. There's the first one, and then there's a second one to fix the first one that Adam broke and Adam and Eve broke. And so we have the second creation story. And it does exactly the same thing and washes away the chaos. But remember, God has saved samples of every single species, including the species of humanity, on that ark. So the seeds of Eden are on the ark. Noah's his one job, was to save the seeds of Eden, to save a species of every single kind, including humanity. So one pair of animals to save the future of many. So his job wasn't to save the world. His job was to save Eden. And he had to do that by saving the one to save the future of many, because the many were just all filled with chaos. So he finds the one that are righteous among every pair, and he puts them on the ark. And as the rain stops, we see the new creation come forth. So the flood is actually an epic divider between Adam and the rest of the world, all the rest of the shells. It stops the craziness that was going on with Adam, and it puts us now into this new creation that's not 100%, because there's still a little bit of chaos that goes with those seeds on that ark, right? Because it's not totally wiped out. God didn't wipe everything out. So God sets one, he identifies one to save many. And then, when it's all done, he puts down a new covenant with Noah and his family, and you remember that as the bow in the sky. Now, we're going to read from Genesis chapter 9. And the beginning from 1 to 6, for those of you who want to know why we eat meat, this is here. It will explain why we're allowed to eat meat, because now the animals are no longer peaceful with one another. Now there's a hierarchy, and every animal fears humanity. But we're going to move on down to verse 7. And this, you're going to hear an echo of the words that God spoke to Adam and Eve in Eden. And so this is a new creation, and so now we're going to hear the same words. And it says in verse 7, "As for you, be fertile and multiply. Populate the earth and multiply in it." That sounds like the exact same words he told Adam and Eve. And then God said to Noah and to his sons with him. I always thought it was just Noah, but it's Noah and his sons. "I am now setting up my covenant with you, with your descendants," so it's forever, "and with every living being with you, with the birds, with the large animals, and all the animals on earth, leaving the ark with you." And from this point, God fills the earth, just as he did on day 5 and 6. And he says, "I will set up my covenant with you so that never again will all life be cut off by floodwaters. There will never be a flood to destroy the earth." So there's never going to be another creation like this. And God said, "This is the symbol of the covenant that I'm drawing up between me and you and every living thing with you." See, this wasn't just about a covenant between God and Noah. It's God and all of creation. "I have placed my bow in the clouds," he says. "It will be the symbol of the covenant between me and the earth." All of creation. So out of that ark emerges 3 young men, their wives, and probably families. And they're doing so without walking across the plank of a treacherous river. Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Those are the 3 sons of Noah. Shem, Ham, and Japheth actually had a job. Their job was to fill and multiply all the parts of the earth and multiply in it. You see, Noah wasn't able to do that anymore. He had to bring his family to be the seeds for the future. So Noah's job was to get them there, to bridge that gap between Adam and the flood, and get him past that so that they could go on to repopulate the earth. So Noah's one job preserved humanity and preserved everything in creation. Now, Noah was the one who provided the safe transport for all of the seeds that were found in Eden. Noah was the one who preserved the many. And this is what happened to the sons. Okay, so if we look at the map, Ham is the youngest, and he's going to go on to fill Egypt and Canaan. So you see where Egypt and Canaan, and almost all of our story is going to take now place from that Egypt and Canaan. But out of Egypt and Canaan are going to come the pharaohs and the nasty kings of Canaan. And Jephthah's heirs are going to fill the land north and east of Canaan. And so if you go north and you go a little bit east between Canaan and Mesopotamia, this is where Assyria and Babylonia are going to come from. And so these are going to be the attackers of the people who are in Canaan. But then there's one. So God uses one of the sons of Noah called Shem. And you remember we had a sheep named Shem that we went looking for this summer, right? That was Shem. But now we're talking about Shem, the real person. And Shem would go on to become the people of Shem, and his people would become the people of God. But it takes us a while to get there. So Shem will stay in that Mesopotamia area, which is where the flood happened, which is where the Garden of Eden is considered to be. And Shem will settle. His people will grow and multiply and grow and multiply. And then there will be a place that is in the lower part of Mesopotamia, kind of in the southeast corner or southwest corner, called the land of Ur, U-R. And Ur was actually a huge mega city in ancient times. And it was destroyed many times through floods and other things, but it was always rebuilt. And it was a mega city of epic proportion. And that was built by the people of Shem. But out of the city of Shem, out of the city of Ur, the people with Shem would start to pick up and travel now, moving eventually back to Canaan. And so this is what happened. Chaos wasn't totally done with the earth. It oozed into this newly created world, and the people of Shem, who were just ordinary people, they were not pharaohs, they were not turning into kings, they weren't turning into big people like the Assyrians and the Babylonians. They were just ordinary folks. And they were the type of people who were kind of like us. They were the farmers and the craftsmen, and they were the city dwellers and the tribesmen. And so they just were kind of normal folks. But these normal folks fell away from the covenant of God, and so did the others. These normal folks started to believe of the God of the month. Now, I don't know if you think about the God of the month, but each one of us has one. And their God of the month, there was the God for the harvest, and the God for the planting, and the God for the rain, and the God for stopping the rain, and the God for even a victory in battle. God for good luck, good fortune. There was a God for everything. And all these gods would fight amongst themselves, and all these gods really didn't like people. They were kind of a nuisance to them, and all these gods would demand a human sacrifice. All these gods would demand human sacrifice. They didn't have a God who loved them. The people of Shem were slaves to these gods who didn't love them and demanded human sacrifice. And while I find that utterly appalling, I think that we're more like the people of Shem than we believe. You know, I do want a good life, and I want what's good for my kids, and I want to be healed when I'm sick, and I want my garden to grow without weeds, and I want my life to have no weeds, and I want to be victorious, all the people who hate me, people who bother me in life. I want to be victorious, and I want to be successful in my work. And then I wonder, what am I willing to sacrifice for all those gods that I hold so value? Am I willing to sacrifice my sleep, my health, my vocation, my home? Am I willing to sacrifice my kids so that I can have the good job, so they can get the right house, so that we can have enough money, so we can go on vacation and have all those things? And what am I willing to sacrifice to keep my gods happy? And how has your small gods enslaved you? So I think the people of Shem were just ordinary people like you and I. But the people of Shem, the one people of Shem, had a job to do. And their job was to give birth to a man called Abram. Abram in Hebrew means Ab, father, and Ram, exalted, father exalted. Abram and his household would leave that land of Ur and eventually wander into Canaan. God would use the people of Shem, to have the one to save the many. And so the seeds of Eden would transport themselves through the people of Shem down to Abraham, down to Abram, who would become Abraham, and it would change the course of religion everywhere in that whole era. I watched National Geographic the other day, and they said this one event that I'm about to tell you changed the course of human understanding of gods. And it happened through the people of Shem, who were saved by Noah, who saved the seeds from Eden. Abram would take his one son up to a mountaintop to build an altar to sacrifice and worship the one God. So Abram had already fallen away from the many gods and had figured out there was just one. He was the first one who was righteous to believe in only one God. But he still held the culture of Shem. And so God transcends the culture and understands what Abram is about to do. And Abram sets off, and God tests him all the way to see how far he's going to go. Abram takes his only son that he had prayed for and wept for and wanted and longed for, and he knew that the gods always needed a child sacrifice, and he walked up that mountain with that child to do what all the other gods would have asked him to do. And God followed him all the way up the mountain to see if he would do what he thought he would do, and it's at that mountain where God stops the hand of Abram from preventing him from killing his only son. Abram met a very different God. Not only was he the God of all creation, he was a God who loved his people, didn't use his people, and this God did not demand children to die. It was epic in the terms of religion in the biblical times of that era. It was the first time that a God had not demanded a human child to be sacrificed. And out of Abram comes the seeds through Isaac, who would become the people of God. The people of Shem would give Abram, who'd give Isaac, who'd become the people of God. God used one to save the many. Noah was like you and I, just wanted to save his family, build an ark, get the animals to safety. Abraham just wanted to have a family that he couldn't have. And God used those ones to save the many. So on that shelf we have of Noah, days 1 through 6 are recreated. So there's an epic flood, and the seeds of Eden are preserved all the way from the land of Eden all the way to the people of Shem. And the people of Shem will be on the shelf of Abraham, and the people of Shem will carry those seeds to give birth to Abraham, who will give birth to Isaac, who will give birth to an entire nation that will be called Israel. All because one saved many. So the presence of God would come, and it would come back to that place. And on that presence of God, where God met Abraham, the city of Jerusalem would be built by the people of Shem, who became the people of God. And the city of Jerusalem would be built on that very place where child sacrifice was stopped. It was such a sacred place. Child sacrifice was stopped. God loved the people. And so a temple was built, and a city was built, and the city was called Jerusalem. And the city of Jerusalem was the promise of the people to be in the presence of God, in the place of God. Jerusalem was going to become the new Eden. And the presence of God did come, if you remember. The presence of God did come and walk among Eden. And the people of Eden, who became the people of God in Jerusalem, did not recognize the presence of God, who we recognize as Jesus. The people did not trust God, just like they didn't in Eden. And ironically, they would demand the sacrifice of a child of God that God would not allow. So they demanded a sacrifice. What God stopped, the people of God demanded. And so the one child of God was sacrificed to save the many children of God. And once again, the people of Shem had trusted themselves and their wisdom more, just like back in the Garden of Eden. But God already knew that, right? So a great rescue plan is unfolding in that mountain. For 3 days, a great rescue plan is about to emerge on that same mountain where God met Abraham from the people of Shem, who came from Noah's Ark, who were preserved by the seeds of Eden. And the epic of Eden is far from over. Would you pray with me? Gracious God, how many times have we felt that we are not enough? How many times have we felt that whatever effort we have is not enough to do any important things in the world? And yet, God, you chose the ones to save the many. Bless the efforts of our work. Help us to see your presence in our lives so that we can be part of the one who saved the many. Through Jesus Christ. Amen. You are the people of Shem. God has called you to be his people. And through you, the people of Shem, who became the people of God, the people of Jesus, arose. And the people of Jesus found all the people all over the world, because the promise of Eden belongs to each and every one of you. We know that God knows that the one thing you do may save the many. So open your hearts to that one thing, the call upon your life, the call upon the week, the call upon the moment. May that God who loves you and stopped you from hurting one another, may that God who sent his Son to be the sacrifice for many, who then sent the Holy Spirit to guide you, be with you now and forevermore. Amen.